The galaxy spoke of the apex in low voices and fearful reports. They were called strong, fast, and impossible to stop once anger took hold. Long ago the apex had fought many wars. They won most of them, but each victory cost them more of their own people. Their cities burned not only from enemy fire, but from their own endless battles. Over time, other species learned one rule: stay away. The apex were dangerous alone and even more dangerous together. The Galactic Council watched from a distance. They placed warning markers near apex space and told traders to turn back. Some believed the apex would destroy themselves one day. Others simply did not care when it happened. No ships came to help. No voices tried to speak. Silence became the galaxy's answer. James knew these stories well. He had read every report before stepping onto the observation ship. Still, words on a screen were different from what he saw through the forward window. Apex space looked wounded. Stations floated half-dark. Old battle marks scarred moons and planets. This was not a place of pride. It was a place holding its breath. Emily stood beside him, her hands resting on a small data pad. She was quiet, watching the energy readings and life signs scroll past. "They're running on emergency systems," she said softly. "Some of these stations shouldn't even be standing." James nodded. "But they are." "That alone tells a story," Emily replied. Their mission was simple on paper. Observe. Record. Live. The council had been clear. No contact. No aid. No promises. Humanity was still new to the wider galaxy, and leaders did not want trouble. The apex were trouble. As the ship moved closer to the frontier, apex patrol craft appeared. They were sharp-edged and heavy, built for war, not beauty. Weapons tracked the human ship, but no shots were fired. The apex watched just as the galaxy always watched them. Inside one patrol craft, an apex commander studied the human vessel. He expected fear. He expected retreat. Instead, the ship held its course, slow and steady. It did not lock weapons. It did not run. "This is strange," the commander muttered. "Humans were not supposed to come this close." On the human ship, alarms chimed softly. Emily glanced at the readouts. "They could destroy us in seconds." James took a slow breath. "Yes. But they haven't." Hours passed. The human ship remained at the edge of apex space. It sent no messages. It made no demands. It simply stayed. That was when the first signal came. It was weak and broken, barely holding together. Emily worked fast, cleaning the noise. A rough voice filled the room. It did not threaten. It did not shout. It asked a single question. "Why are you here?" James stepped forward and answered calmly. "We are humans. We came to learn." There was silence on the line. Long enough that Emily thought the signal had dropped. Then the voice returned, quieter this time. "No one comes to learn. They come to fight. Or to wait for us to die." James looked at the darkened stations on the screen. "We are not here for that." The apex did not answer right away. But they did not fire. Permission came hours later. Limited access. One station. No weapons active. One mistake and the humans would not leave alive. James accepted without argument. The station interior was cold and dim. Apex moved through the halls with careful steps. Their armor was worn, patched many times. Some carried old injuries. Their eyes followed the humans, filled with doubt rather than rage. Emily noticed how thin some of them looked. "They're running low on supplies," she whispered. "Yes," James said. "But no one mentions that in the reports." They were brought before an apex leader, older than most, his armor marked with symbols of past wars. He studied James and Emily closely. "You should fear us," the leader said. "Everyone does." James met his gaze. "We know your history." The apex leader gave a sharp laugh. "History is just another word for failure." Emily spoke carefully. "We see strength here. But also exhaustion." The room went still. Apex warriors shifted, unsure if this was an insult. The leader raised a hand. "Continue." Emily held up her data pad. "Your reactors are unstable but not beyond repair. Your people are fighting each other because there is nothing else left to fight. No purpose. No rest." The apex leader stared at the data. His voice lowered. "We were made to fight. That is what the galaxy says." James shook his head. "That is what the galaxy decided when it turned away." The words hung heavy in the air. For the first time, the apex leader did not look angry. He looked tired. "We were dangerous alone," the leader said slowly. "So they left us alone." "Yes," James replied. "And alone you were forced to keep fighting just to exist." Silence followed. Then something unexpected happened. The Apex leader removed his helmet. Scars lined his face. His eyes were sharp but filled with something close to grief. "If you are wrong," he said, "your people will pay the price." James nodded. "We understand risk." Emily looked around the room. "You are not cruel," she said. "You are isolated." Some of the Apex looked away. Others clenched their fists. The leader replaced his helmet. "You may stay for one cycle," he said. "Observe." Nothing more. It was more than the galaxy had ever offered. As James and Emily returned to their quarters, Emily spoke quietly. They expected fear. James smiled slightly. So did the galaxy. Outside the station, stars burned cold and distant. But for the first time in many cycles, Apex Space was not completely alone. And somewhere deep within the silent halls, the idea began to form that endless conflict was not the Apex's true nature, only the result of being abandoned too long. That thought, small and fragile, was more dangerous to old beliefs than any weapon ever built. James did not sleep well after the first meeting. The Apex station hummed around him, old metal struggling to stay alive. Warning lights flickered in distant halls. This place was not preparing for war. It was trying not to fall apart. By morning, a message arrived from the Galactic Council. "Observation only," the order said. "No direct involvement. No aid. No contact beyond what is required for safety." James read it twice. He already knew what it meant. Leave soon. Say nothing. Let history repeat itself. Emily stood near the narrow window, watching Apex workers move slowly along an outer platform. One slipped and nearly fell before another caught him. No one shouted. No one laughed. They simply kept working. "They're barely holding this place together," she said. James lowered the screen. "I know." Not long after, Michael arrived from the human ship docked nearby. He was an engineer, calm and practical, the kind of person who fixed things without asking who deserved help. His eyes widened as he scanned the station systems. "These readings are bad," Michael said. "One reactor surge and half the station is gone." Emily frowned. "Can it be stabilized?" "Yes," Michael replied. "With basic support. Simple changes. Nothing dramatic." James felt the weight settle in his chest. Helping would be easy. Not helping would be just as easy. Only one of those choices would follow him forever. Apex guards appeared at the doorway. They watched closely as the humans spoke. One finally said, "You are not allowed here today." James stepped forward. "We want to help." The guard stiffened. "Help?" The word sounded strange in his mouth. Before the guard could respond, the Apex leader from before entered the hall. He looked from James to Michael to Emily. "What kind of help?" the leader asked. Michael lifted his tool pack slightly. "The kind that keeps your station from breaking apart." The leader studied their faces. "You were told not to interfere." "Yes," James said honestly. "By our people." "And you still ask?" James nodded. "Because leaving things as they are will end badly." The Apex leader turned away and walked down the hall. For a moment, James thought the answer was no. Then the leader spoke without turning back. "One section. One cycle. If this is a trick, you will not leave." Michael gave a small smile. "Fair." Work began immediately. Michael and Emily moved through tight corridors, checking systems that had not been properly repaired in years. Apex engineers followed them closely, silent and tense. Emily pointed to a cracked stabilizer. "This is overworked. You're forcing power through damaged lines." An Apex engineer replied sharply, "We have no choice." Michael shook his head. "There's always a choice. Sometimes it's just not obvious." They rerouted power, reduced strain, and sealed weak points using simple tools. Nothing advanced. Nothing flashy. Just careful work. As hours passed, the station's hum grew steadier. Lights stopped flickering. Temperature levels stabilized. The Apex engineers watched in disbelief. "This should not work," one said. Michael wiped his hands. "It works because you never had time to slow down and think. You were always preparing for the next fight." Word spread quickly. Apex workers gathered in small groups, watching humans repair systems they had accepted as broken long ago. No one shouted. No weapons were raised. For the first time in many cycles, something improved instead of failing. That was when the warnings arrived. Messages from other species flooded the human network. Some were polite. Others were angry. "You are making a mistake. The Apex will turn on you. They destroy everything they touch." James listened to a recorded council session later that day. One voice stood out, sharp and cold. By helping them, you invite disaster, the speaker said. Some threats must be allowed to end themselves. James closed the feed. Emily sat beside him. They're afraid. Yes, James said. But fear is not wisdom. Michael leaned against the wall. If this station fails, hundreds die. That's not a theory. That's math. Apex guards passed by, no longer gripping their weapons as tightly. One even nodded at Emily before realizing what he had done. That night, the Apex leader summoned James again. You disobeyed your leaders, the Apex leader said. Yes, James replied. Why? James answered without hesitation. Because watching you fail felt worse than risking punishment. The Apex leader was silent for a long time. Finally he spoke. The galaxy believes we only understand force. James met his gaze. The galaxy never tried anything else. Outside, the station's main reactor stabilized fully. A low alarm shut off for the first time in years. Apex workers stopped and listened, unsure at first, then relaxed when nothing exploded. It was a small moment. Quiet. Easy to miss. But it changed everything. The council sent another message soon after. Stronger this time. Withdraw immediately. James looked around the station. At the repaired walls. At the Apex workers sharing tools with Michael. At Emily explaining data readings to an Apex technician who listened closely. He sent a reply. Request denied, it read. There was no anger in his voice. Only certainty. Humanity would take responsibility for this choice. Because James understood something the galaxy did not. The Apex were dangerous when left alone with nothing but old wars and fading strength. Isolation sharpened their worst instincts. Silence pushed them toward endless conflict. But standing here, watching Apex and humans work side by side, James saw another truth. Leaving them alone was the real danger. And this time humanity chose not to look away. The warning came without drama. No loud alarms. No long speech. Just a quiet signal spreading through Apex space like a cold breath. Unknown fleet. Fast approach. Weapons active. James was with Emily when the first alert reached the station. He looked at the display and felt his chest tighten. The ships were not Apex. They carried no council marks. No request for talk followed. They saw weakness, Emily said softly. And they came to take advantage. The Apex reacted fast but not calmly. Old habits rose like fire. Warriors rushed to battle stations. Orders were shouted. Fear mixed with anger, sharp and familiar. The Apex leader turned to James. You should leave. This is not your fight. James opened a channel instead. David, he said, his voice steady. We need you now. The response came almost at once. We're already moving. Human ships broke from jump space at the edge of the system minutes later. Clean lines. Defensive formations. No hesitation. They placed themselves between the Apex station and the incoming fleet. Apex sensors struggled to understand what they were seeing. They're shielding us? One officer asked. The hostile fleet did not slow down. Weapons charged. Missiles launched. David stood on the bridge of the lead human ship. He was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He had seen many battles, but this one felt different. He was not defending territory or orders. He was defending people who had been left alone for too long. Hold the line, David said. No advance. No retreat. Human ships took the first hits. Shields flared bright. All shook. But they did not break formation. On the Apex station, silence spread. They're taking the damage, an Apex commander said. Why? James answered quietly. Because that's what standing together means. Apex fighters launched next. They moved fast and hard as they always had. But something was different. Instead of rushing forward alone, they aligned with human ships. They waited. They listened. David opened a shared channel. Apex units, match our movement. Protect each other. There was a pause. Then an Apex pilot replied. Understood. They flew side by side. The hostile fleet pressed harder, clearly expecting the humans to pull back. Instead, David ordered a defensive arc, drawing fire away from the station. Apex ships followed, instinct fighting against new discipline. An Apex cruiser took a direct hit and began to lose power. Without orders, a human frigate moved in front of it, absorbing the next strike. The Apex bridge went still. They could have let us fall, an officer whispered. But they did not. Fighting raged across open space. Not wild. Not reckless. Controlled. Sure. David did not command from distance. He flew close enough that Apex pilots could see human hull markings. Close enough that damage was shared. An Apex warrior named only by rank locked onto an enemy ship and hesitated. Old instinct said charge. New instinct said wait. A human voice came over the channel. I've got your left. The Apex pilot nodded, though the human could not see it. Together they fired. The enemy ship broke apart under combined force. The hostile fleet began to lose confidence. They had expected chaos. They found coordination. On the station, Emily watched life signs steady instead of spike. They're fighting differently, she said. James nodded. So are we. An enemy ship broke through the line and headed straight for the station. Weapons armed. No time to stop it cleanly. An Apex commander prepared to ram. Before he could, David's ship surged forward and cut the enemy off, taking a heavy hit that cracked armor and sent sparks across the bridge. David! James shouted. David steadied himself. Still here. Apex leaders watched the feed in silence. Humans were bleeding for them. Not to rule them. Not to claim them. Just to protect. The Apex leader clenched his fists. All units, he said firmly. Protect the human line. The order surprised everyone. Apex ships shifted instantly, forming a tight shield around the damaged human vessel. They took hits without breaking formation. The enemy fleet hesitated. They had come to crush weakness. Instead they faced unity. Minutes later the hostile ships retreated. Some limped away. Others vanished into jump space. No pursuit followed. The battle ended not with victory cheers, but with long, shaking breaths. David's ship drifted, damaged but alive. Apex repair crews moved toward it without being asked. On the bridge of the Apex station, the leader removed his helmet again. His hands trembled slightly. They did not try to command us, he said. They did not stand above us. James answered softly. They stood with you. Later, as repairs began and wounded ships were stabilized, Apex and humans worked side by side again. This time not in silence. An Apex engineer handed tools to Michael. A human medic treated an Apex pilot without question. Trust did not arrive all at once. It never did. But it began there, in open space where survival depended on shared risk. The Apex had always believed strength meant standing alone. That needing others was weakness. That belief had nearly destroyed them. Now, watching human ships remain in place even after the danger passed, the Apex leaders understood something new. Humans did not fight to conquer. They fought to protect. And in that simple choice, something stronger than fear began to form. Not an alliance written on paper, but trust earned through shared survival. Change did not come fast and it did not come easy. After the battle, Apex space did not return to silence. Human ships stayed. Not as guards. Not as rulers. They stayed as partners. Repairs continued, but something deeper was also being fixed. Old habits were questioned. New ones were tested. The Apex were used to reacting, not planning. When danger appeared, they charged. When anger rose, they followed it. That way of living had shaped them for generations. It had also nearly destroyed them. Jessica arrived with the next human group. She was calm, clear, and patient. Daniel came with her, quieter but sharp-eyed, always watching how people moved and responded. They were not there to command. They were there to teach and to learn. The first joint training session was tense. Apex warriors stood on one side of the wide chamber. Humans stood on the other. No one spoke at first. Old fear and old pride filled the space between them. Jessica stepped forward. We train together, she said simply. No ranks here. No sides. An Apex warrior crossed his arms. We already know how to fight. Daniel nodded. We know. That's not the problem. That answer caught their attention. Training began with small exercises. Movement drills. Defensive positions. Communication checks. Apex warriors moved fast but alone. Humans moved slower but in groups. The first test failed. An Apex unit rushed ahead, breaking formation. A simulated strike hit them from the side. The system flashed red. Silence followed. Jessica did not raise her voice. Again, she said. The Apex repeated the move. Failed again. Frustration showed on their faces. One finally spoke. Why wait when speed wins? Daniel answered calmly. Speed wins short fights. Planning wins survival. They ran the drill again. This time, Apex warriors held position. They watched. They listened. When they moved together. Green lights filled the room. The Apex stared at the result as if it were a trick. It feels slow, one said. Jessica smiled slightly. It feels controlled. Days passed. Then weeks. Apex warriors learned to pause before striking. to share information instead of acting alone. Humans learned how Apex senses worked, how quickly they adapted, how strong they became when guided instead of restrained. Mixed teams formed. Human and Apex patrols moved through frontier space together. When pirates appeared, they were stopped without cities burning. When disputes rose, Apex ships held position instead of charging first. Reports spread. Other species noticed. The Apex defended a trade route today. The Apex escorted civilians. The Apex withdrew instead of attacking. The words felt wrong to many ears. On the Galactic Council, debates grew heated. "You are empowering a former threat," one leader accused, speaking directly to a human delegate. James stood calmly. "We are guiding a neighbor." "They were monsters," another voice said. "They were isolated," James replied. "There is a difference." Images were shared across the network. Apex ships forming shields around weaker vessels. Apex patrols holding fire while negotiations took place. Apex warriors standing beside humans, not above them. Fear did not disappear. It rarely did. Some species pulled their ships farther back. Others increased weapons production. Old memories were hard to erase. On one distant world, a council member asked quietly, "What if the Apex turn on you?" James answered with the same calm he had learned to use often. "Then we will face it together. But we will not punish them for what they have not done." Back in Apex space, an alarm sounded on a remote station. Not an attack. A structural failure. The station began to lose power and drift. In the past, Apex response would have been fast and violent. Ships rushing in, colliding, making things worse. This time, mixed teams responded. Daniel coordinated movement. Apex pilots held steady positions. Human engineers and Apex technicians worked side by side. Power was stabilized. Lives were saved. No battle. No destruction. Just restraint. An Apex leader watched the operation from the command deck. He remembered when strength meant leaving no room for weakness. Now he saw strength in waiting, in protecting, in choosing not to strike. Jessica stood nearby, checking final readings. "You did well," she said. The leader inclined his head. "We are learning." The galaxy continued to watch. Some still whispered that humanity was making a mistake. That monsters could not change. That history always returned. But history was already shifting. Children on Apex stations began training differently. Not just with weapons but with planning exercises. With shared tasks. With lessons that taught when not to fight. Humanity's reputation changed too. They were no longer seen as simple newcomers or quiet survivors. They were questioned, studied, sometimes feared. "Why help them?" a foreign envoy asked James during a private channel. James answered honestly. "Because someone once helped us." The envoy had no reply. The Apex were no longer spoken of only as destroyers. They were becoming known as defenders of unstable regions. Guardians of routes others feared to travel. Their old reputation did not vanish. But a new one grew beside it. And humanity stood at the center of that change, not with chains or commands but with patience. The galaxy did not yet agree on what this meant. But one thing was clear. The Apex were no longer dangerous because they stood alone. And humanity had proven that guiding strength was far more powerful than fearing it. Peace did not arrive with loud celebration. It arrived quietly, like a long-held breath finally released. Across the frontier, ships moved without fear for the first time in many cycles. Trade routes reopened. Stations powered their lights without emergency warnings flashing red. Apex patrols flew steady paths, not hunting for enemies, but watching for danger before it reached others. The alliance held. Some expected it to break. Many waited for the Apex to return to old habits. Others waited for humans to leave once the work was done. Neither happened. John sat alone in a small observation room, recording the final report for the Galactic Council. His voice was calm, but his words carried weight. "The Apex were never the true danger," he said. "Abandonment was. Isolation turned strength into rage. When left alone, they fought themselves because no one stood with them." He paused, reviewing old footage on the screen. Images of damaged stations. Wild battles. Then newer images appeared. Mixed patrols. Repaired cities. Apex ships forming shields instead of spears. Guidance did not weaken them, John continued. It gave them direction. Partnership gave them purpose. He sent the report without adding emotion. The facts spoke clearly enough. Outside the station, Lauren watched a group of children move through a wide training hall. Some were human. Some were Apex. They looked different, moved differently but laughed the same way. A human instructor showed them how to build a simple structure from light panels. An apex child struggled at first, pushing too hard, bending the pieces. Another child, human, gently guided their hands. Slow, the instructor said. Together. The structure held. Lauren smiled. This scene would have been impossible not long ago. Apex children had been raised only for battle. Humans had been warned to stay away. Now they shared lessons, tools, and quiet moments. An apex parent stood nearby, watching carefully. Lauren noticed the tension in their posture slowly fade as the children worked. They learn quickly, the parent said. Yes, Lauren replied. They always did. The parent looked at her. We were taught that the galaxy feared us because we were born wrong. Lauren shook her head. No. They feared you because they did not understand you. The parent considered this. And you? Lauren answered honestly. We chose to understand. Across the galaxy, reactions continued to spread. Some worlds sent messages of thanks after Apex patrols protected their stations. Others sent questions. A few sent warnings, still unable to let go of old fear. One council member spoke openly during a public session. Humanity has changed the balance. You have taken responsibility for what others feared. James listened from afar, his hands folded. He did not interrupt. Another voice followed. They did not create a weapon. They created stability. Silence filled the chamber. Back on the frontier, David oversaw joint exercises. Apex and human crews moved with smooth coordination now. Commands were short, clear. No shouting. No panic. An Apex officer approached him. We used to believe survival meant winning every fight. David replied. Now? Now, the officer said slowly, it means making sure no fight is needed. That idea spread faster than any fleet. Pirate groups avoided Apex space entirely. Not because it was violent, but because it was guarded. Calm strength replaced wild force. The frontier became known as a place where trouble ended quickly and quietly. John received replies to his report. Some were short acknowledgments. Others were long arguments. One message stood out. You have shown us something uncomfortable, it read. That fear can be a choice. John leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment. On a distant station, an Apex child asked a human teacher a simple question. Why did you come here? The teacher answered without thinking. Because someone had to. That answer found its way into many reports, retold in different words across many worlds. Humanity did not claim victory. They did not demand praise. They stayed, worked, and listened. The galaxy watched and slowly adjusted its view. It learned that strength did not always mean control. That danger was not always born, it was often shaped by neglect. That standing beside someone could change them more than standing against them. The Apex were no longer spoken of only in warnings. They were spoken of in plans. In defenses. In futures. Lauren watched the children finish their lesson. They stepped back together, proud of what they had built. It was not perfect, but it stood. She thought that this, more than fleets or treaties, was the real proof. The galaxy had learned many lessons over its long history. Most were written in loss. This one was different. Humanity's greatest weapon was not force or fear or firepower. It was choosing who to stand with, and refusing to walk away when it mattered most. And because of that choice, the frontier no longer waited for collapse. It moved